She smiled and said, "You're not leaving until I'm satisfied." And I'll never forget what she meant. Started as something small, a favor, really. My friend had borrowed my camera lens a few weeks back, and I just wanted to return his charger that he'd left in my car. Simple. I didn't even plan to stay. When I pulled up to his house, the street was quiet, washed in the last gold of a late afternoon. The windows glowed soft and amber, that calm light that makes everything feel slower, warmer. I rang the bell once, and then I heard her voice. "Come in, it's open." It was his mom, Elena. I hadn't seen her in months. She stood in the doorway, her hair tied loosely back, a few strands framing her face, wearing a cream-colored blouse and jeans that somehow looked elegant just because of how she carried herself. Barefoot, relaxed, but with that same quiet confidence she'd always had. "Hey," I said, holding up the charger. "Just dropping this off for Aaron." She smiled, the kind of smile that softens the air around it. "He's out with friends. But you're here now. Come in. I just made coffee." I hesitated, but she was already walking toward the kitchen. Something about her voice, steady, low, with a trace of amusement, made it hard to say no. The house felt different without my friend there. Quieter. The faint smell of cinnamon drifted from the kitchen, mixing with the earthy scent of brewing coffee. I noticed how the light fell across her kitchen counter, catching the edge of her gold bracelet when she reached for the mugs. "You've changed," she said lightly as she handed me one. "You used to avoid eye contact." I laughed, embarrassed. "Guess growing up does that." She smiled again, eyes steady on mine. "Or maybe you just learned to see people." We sat at the dining table, her across from me, elbows resting loosely on the wood. She asked about school, work, life, but she didn't ask like a parent would. She listened like she meant to remember every word. And somewhere between the warmth of the coffee and the warmth of her gaze, I realized I was telling her more than I usually told anyone. There was something soothing in her presence, the kind that made silence feel safe, not awkward, the kind that made me notice small things. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she laughed, how her voice softened when she spoke about her garden, the faint trace of lavender on her wrist when she reached for the sugar bowl. At some point, she said, "You don't have to rush off, do you?" I shook my head. "No, not really." "Good," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Then stay a little. It's nice to have company." And that's how it began, with sunlight spilling through her kitchen window, a cup of coffee, and a conversation that lingered longer than either of us expected. I came to return a charger. But when I left that night, I carried something else entirely. A question I didn't yet have words for. After coffee, I thought I should leave. I even stood up, mug in hand, ready to say goodbye. But Elena glanced toward the hallway and said, almost casually, "Actually, do you mind helping me with something first?" Her tone was easy, but there was a faint uncertainty beneath it, like she wasn't sure she should ask. "Of course," I said, setting the mug down. She led me to her study, a smaller room lined with bookshelves and framed photographs. The smell of cedar and old paper lingered in the air. Near the corner, one of the shelves leaned awkwardly to one side. "I've been meaning to fix this," she said, crouching beside it. "But the screws won't tighten. I guess I don't have the same strength I used to." I knelt beside her, and for a moment, the world seemed to narrow. The faint hum of rain starting outside, the quiet rhythm of her breathing, the way a loose strand of her hair brushed against my sleeve. I could feel the heat from her shoulder, just inches away from mine. She held the board steady as I adjusted the screws. "You're good at this," she murmured. "Years of fixing cheap apartment furniture," I replied. She laughed softly, that kind of low, warm laugh that felt like it reached past words. When I glanced at her, she was watching me. Not in a way that felt invasive, but curious, thoughtful. "You've grown into yourself," she said quietly. "I used to think of you as Aaron's quiet friend. But you're different now." Her words landed heavier than I expected. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled, pretending to focus on the screwdriver. My chest felt tight, not with nerves exactly, but something I couldn't name. "Hold it steady," I said. She did, her fingers brushing over mine as she adjusted her grip. The touch was brief, accidental, but something about it stayed, like static beneath the skin. When I looked up, her gaze flickered, soft but unreadable. "There," I said finally, tightening the last screw. "That should hold." She leaned closer, inspecting the shelf. Her hair fell forward, grazing my forearm. For a moment time just paused. Then she stood, smoothing her blouse, smiling faintly. "I guess I can still rely on you," she said, her tone light again. I tried to respond, but my throat felt dry. She noticed, her eyes softened, and she reached out, touching my shoulder in thanks. Her hand lingered just a second longer than it needed to. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome," I managed, my voice lower than I expected. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't simple either. The kind of silence that holds something unsaid. Outside, the rain thickened against the windows. She glanced toward it and smiled. "Guess you'll have to wait until it slows down," she said. "No point getting soaked." I nodded, trying not to read too much into her words. But as I followed her back toward the kitchen, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, she didn't want me to leave yet. The rain didn't let up. Came down steady and patient, the kind of rain that makes the whole world slow down with it. Elena sighed softly and said, "Looks like you're stuck here for a while." There was a flicker of amusement in her eyes, but also something gentler. Something I hadn't noticed before. She brought out a blanket and draped it over the back of the couch. "You can sit here," she said. "It's warmer by the fireplace." I sat down and she joined me. Not close, but close enough that I could feel the quiet heat between us. The soft glow from the lamp caught the faint lines near her eyes. Not marks of age but of laughter, of years lived fully. There was beauty in that, in the calm steadiness she carried. We talked, at first about small things. My work, her garden, the new cafe that opened downtown. But the conversation shifted naturally, as if both of us were tired of the surface. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You know, sometimes I wonder when life got so quiet." I looked at her. "You mean lonely?" Her gaze held mine for a second longer than necessary before she looked away. "Maybe. My son's grown, my days feel predictable. You reach a point where people stop asking how you really feel. They just assume you're fine." There was a vulnerability in her voice, not weakness but honesty. It drew me in. "I get that," I said quietly. "Everyone expects me to know where I'm going. But truth is, I don't. Half the time I just drift." Her lips curved in a faint smile. "Drifting isn't so bad. It means you're still moving." We sat in silence for a while after that, the kind of silence that feels shared, not empty. I watched the rain trace paths down the window. The scent of her perfume lingered in the air. Something floral but subtle, like jasmine caught in the rain. "You're easy to talk to," she said suddenly, her voice low, reflective. "It's strange. I don't usually talk like this." I smiled a little. "Maybe you just needed someone to listen." Her eyes softened, her expression unreadable. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I just needed someone who sees me." That sentence stayed in the air, uncomfortably beautiful. I didn't know what to do with it, with the warmth it stirred in my chest, or the way she was looking at me then. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the rain began to ease. She reached for her cup, her fingers brushing mine as she did. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even intentional. But neither of us pulled away right away. For a brief second, we just sat there, our hands touching, eyes locked. And then she smiled. A small, tired, but sincere smile, and whispered almost to herself, "It's strange how easy it is to forget the years when you feel understood." That was the moment everything changed. Not through a confession or a kiss, but through something quieter, something real. By the time the rain faded into a quiet drizzle, evening had settled deep across the neighborhood. The world outside the window was soft, silver light on wet pavement, distant car lights gliding through mist. Inside, the house glowed warm and calm. I stood to leave, reluctant but trying not to show it. "It's finally slowing down," I said. I should probably get going before it starts again. Elena looked up from the couch. For a moment, she didn't answer. She just watched me, thoughtful, maybe even uncertain. Then she smiled, a small, teasing curve of her lips. "You're not leaving," she said, "until I'm satisfied." The words hit harder than they should have. The way she said them, soft, deliberate, froze me for a heartbeat. My mind caught on them, replayed them, twisted them into meanings I couldn't admit out loud. And then she blinked, realizing what she'd just said. Her cheeks flushed a little. "I meant," she began, then laughed awkwardly, shaking her head. "I meant the shelf. I wasn't sure if it would stay up, but it's still holding. You did a good job." I tried to laugh too, but it came out uneven. "Right? The shelf." "Yeah." Silence filled the room. Not heavy, but fragile. Like we were both standing at the edge of something unspoken. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I say things wrong sometimes," she said softly. "I forget how they might sound." "It's fine," I said quickly. I knew what you meant, but the truth was I didn't, or maybe I didn't want to, because something in her tone, that little shimmer of hesitation, didn't sound accidental. She stood, crossing to the window, arms folded. Her reflection blurred in the glass, caught between the dim lamplight and the fading night. "It's strange," she said after a moment. "How quiet the house feels when he's gone. I used to think I liked it." I stepped closer, not too near, but enough that I could see the tension in her shoulders. "You don't anymore?" She turned her head slightly, her eyes meeting mine in the reflection. "Some silences feel empty," she whispered. The words hung between us, soft, raw, too honest. My pulse beat louder than the rain outside. Every part of me wanted to say something, to close that small space between us. But I couldn't. Instead, I said the safest thing I could. "You'll be okay." She smiled faintly, her reflection giving away what her voice didn't. "Maybe," she said, "but not tonight." I wanted to ask what she meant. I wanted to stay, but I didn't. When I finally stepped out into the damp evening air, the world felt different, heavier, charged. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw her watching me go, her face half hidden behind the curtain. There was no wave, no smile, just that look, the kind that stays with you long after the door closes. And in that look, I understood. Whatever had started between us wasn't an accident anymore. The next few days passed with a kind of restlessness I couldn't explain. I told myself it was nothing, that Elena's words, that moment, had only felt heavier because of the rain, the silence, the coffee, the way the night had stretched too long. But even as I tried to move on, my mind kept circling back to her voice. "You're not leaving until I'm satisfied." It was ridiculous, I thought. She was my friend's mom. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. And yet, I couldn't stop replaying the look in her eyes after she said it. The flicker of embarrassment, the softness that came after. The way she'd stood by the window, half in shadow, half in light. I caught myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Group pictures from years back, when she'd be in the background during barbecues or birthdays, smiling politely, almost detached. I never noticed her then. Not like this. 3 days later, she texted. A simple message. The shelf's holding up perfectly. Attached was a photo, the same shelf I'd fixed, now filled with books and a few framed photos, sunlight streaming across the wood. Underneath, she'd added, "Still perfectly steady." It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. The message carried warmth, a quiet, deliberate echo of that night. I stared at it longer than I should have, reread it until the words blurred. My reply was short, careful. "Glad it's working." But even as I hit send, a hollow feeling settled in my chest. That night, I lay awake, thinking about her, about how calm she'd seemed, how easily she'd listened, how she had this way of seeing people, and how, for the first time, I felt like someone saw me. Maybe that's what drew me in. Not her beauty, though she had plenty of that, but her stillness, her quiet certainty, the way she filled a room without trying. I told myself I should stay away, that it was better this way. But the more I tried to convince myself, the clearer it became. I didn't want to stay away. Every little thing reminded me of her. The sound of rain on my window, the faint scent of lavender when I walked past the market, even the muted tone of her laugh echoing in my head. That kind of connection, once it happens, doesn't fade easily. It lingers even in distance. And maybe that's when I finally understood what she meant that night when she said some silences feel empty. Because the quiet after her, the quiet of not hearing her voice, not seeing her eyes, not having her around, felt exactly like that. Empty. And though I didn't know it yet, that emptiness was already leading me back to her. I told myself I wouldn't go back. I said it out loud, even as if hearing the words might make them true. But every time I passed her street, something inside me slowed. The house looked the same, quiet, steady, a light always glowing behind the curtains. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a thought I couldn't shake. A week after her message, I found myself standing at her doorstep again. I had an excuse ready, my friend's jacket, left in my car. It wasn't a lie, just a reason. Maybe that made it worse. When she opened the door, the look on her face stopped me. It wasn't surprise exactly. It was relief, like she'd been expecting me, even hoping for it. "Hey," I said quietly. "Erin's jacket. Thought I should drop it off." Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Of course," she said. "Come in." The house smelled the same, coffee and something faintly floral. The same music was playing in the background, soft piano, filling the silence between us. She looked beautiful in the simplest way. Her hair loosely pinned up, wearing a pale blue sweater that made her eyes seem even softer. For a few moments we just stood there, neither quite sure how to begin. Then she gestured toward the table. "Tea?" she asked. I nodded, though what I really wanted was clarity, something to make sense of the space between us. When she set the cups down, her hands trembled slightly. "I wasn't sure if I'd see you again," she said. "I wasn't sure if I should come," I admitted. Her eyes lifted, holding mine with quiet honesty. "Then why did you?" I took a breath, because I couldn't stop thinking about that night, about what you said, about how it felt to be here. She exhaled slowly, a hint of sadness in her smile. "I didn't mean to confuse you," she said. "Sometimes I forget that words carry weight, especially when you say them to someone who listens too carefully." "I wasn't confused," I said, my voice lower now. "Just moved." The room went still. Only the rain against the windows soft again, like before. She looked down, then back at me. "You have this way of looking at people," she whispered. "It's disarming. It makes them feel seen, even when they don't want to be." "I only see what's real," I said. Her eyes softened, a sheen of emotion there she didn't try to hide. She reached across the table, her hand resting near mine. Not touching, just close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The air felt thick with everything unspoken. Then, gently, she let her fingers brush against mine. Hesitant, deliberate. "I haven't felt this in a long time," she said quietly. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. And in that moment, I knew the distance between us, all those days of silence, had only brought us closer to the truth. The rain had stopped by the time we finished our tea. The house felt quiet again, but this time the silence was different. Not empty, not heavy, just still. The kind of stillness that follows when two people finally stop pretending they don't understand each other. Elena looked at me across the table, her hand still near mine, the faintest tremor in her breath. "You shouldn't feel responsible for my loneliness," she said gently. "You have your whole life waiting." I shook my head. "This isn't about responsibility." She tilted her head, curious. "It's about honesty," I said. "You made me realize how rare it is to talk without pretending, to be seen without performing. I didn't even know I missed that." She smiled, a real smile this time, not the polite kind, the kind that reached her eyes and softened everything around her. "You always were too sincere for your own good." "Maybe," I said, "but I think that's what you liked about me." Her laugh was quiet, the kind that warms rather than fills a room. She looked down for a moment, tracing the rim of her cup. Maybe I did, she admitted. We both knew the weight of what lingered between us. Something delicate, something we couldn't quite define, but neither of us needed to name it. Some connections don't demand labels. They just ask to be felt. After a while, she stood and walked to the window. The light outside had changed, the last glow of dusk slipping into the silver blue of night. She said softly, "It's strange. I didn't expect you to walk into my evening and make it feel like morning again." Her words stayed with me. I joined her by the window, close enough that I could see our reflections side by side in the glass. We didn't touch, not at first, but the air between us was full of quiet meaning, that slow, steady current that doesn't need to rush to be real. Finally, she turned toward me. "Thank you," she whispered, "for reminding me I can still feel." Her hand came to rest lightly on my arm, her touch soft, grounding. The warmth of her skin sank through the fabric of my sleeve. Not electric this time, but calm, like steady sunlight. "You don't have to thank me," I said. "You did the same for me." Her eyes glistened, though she didn't cry. She just smiled, small, sure, peaceful. "Then we're even." Outside, a cool breeze stirred the curtains. Somewhere down the street, wind chimes rang faintly. The night felt wide and gentle. I started to step away, but she stopped me, her fingers curling around my wrist for just a moment. "Now," she said softly, with that same playful glimmer that began it all, "I'm satisfied." We both laughed, quietly, tenderly. When I left, the air smelled of rain and jasmine. I walked slowly, the warmth of her touch still lingering on my skin. There was no promise made, no future drawn out, just peace. And sometimes that's what love really is. Not a declaration, not an ending, just the quiet knowing that you've left something good behind and taken something gentle with you. Headphone, if this story touched you, take a second to like the video. It helps more people find these quiet moments of connection. Speech Balloon, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever met someone who changed you, even for just one evening? And don't forget to subscribe for more slow burn stories like this, where love isn't rushed, it's felt.